actually one. Eddie, you're everything. Photographer, mayor.
All right, welcome to Human Rights Commission.
Oh,
I didn't order.
okay.
Oh, you say something stupid.
First, we'll take a roll call. Yuki Stewart, President.
Kim Knight, present.
Joe Scapoletti, president.
Lorna Bosco, present. Taylor Crosby, present.
Dan Grow, present.
Assistant one.
Were there any public comments?
We only have
Anybody
7
heard?
right now. 8. He was wondering if it was quorum. How many total people do we have now? 7 or 8?
What's a quorum?
Oh, we're missing Scott and
This is-
Matt.
I hate to table some things that we might want to move on, is all.
I think we have a quorum.
Okay.
Is it 2/3 or?
Okay.
Is quorum based on the total number, the actual number of members?
It's based on the total number of members that you should have, and the quorum is just one more than, yeah, plus one.
We have 12, so we don't have. No.
So you need 7.
Yeah.
2, 3, 4,
Half
5,
plus
6.
1.
I'm
So
sorry.
we don't have a quorum.
You do not have a quorum. Doesn't mean you can't continue to conduct business, you just can't vote on it. So,
Can you vote on it?
yeah.
Okay. Very good. Were there any public comments? I haven't heard any. Okay. And then we have a presentation from our mayor.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. I know it's a beautiful night and a lot going on. I wanted to just take a minute and try to ask the Human Rights Commission to look at a potential project based on some conversations that I had in my last conference that I went on. So I went to a conference and part of an organization called the Mayor's Innovation Project, which includes mayors from various places all across the U.S. We had a meeting in Tacoma where Mayor Woodard's presented what Tacoma uses is called an equity index, social equity index. And one of the things that we've been thinking about and talking about here in the city is ensuring equity in the services that we provide and the areas that we deliver those services. So I wanted to just briefly talk to you a bit about some of the work and show you some of the work that Tacoma did in creating the social equity index, but more importantly, how they use this index that is made up of different data points in the community to help to determine where they're going to provide services and use it to help try to improve neighborhoods along the way. Now, I raised this idea because at the same time we're talking about social equity, we as a city are also engaging in a program that we received a grant fund to start to use, it's very kind of high tech, use AI in property data records and photos to help gauge the health of a neighborhood. So we've been working with a provider through a national program, the National League of Cities, to basically utilize property information and current photographs of properties, outside photographs, to help us determine how healthy a neighborhood is. And we'd like to use that data in conjunction with the creation of a social equity index. Now, to just show you briefly what it is, in Tacoma, they have this equity map. And so they have taken all of the census blocks of their city and they have basically applied various demographics that includes livability, accessibility, economy, education, and environmental health to determine which areas have high social equity and which areas are in need of more programs or more equity in those areas. Tacoma has done it. A lot of other cities have as well. But Tacoma was actually unique where they also have a utility company that expands a little bit out of their borders. So the utility company is also looking at where are most of the shutoffs for the utilities? Where are the build-outs of lead pipes and other removal of lead pipes and other things? So it's quite unique. But I just wanted to just give you an example of one of these areas. So if I just pick an area here that's like a park area. In that area, you can see kind of the equity index is moderate. It gives you the population in that area, as well as disabled households, some demographic data, where they may have immigrated from, if there's immigrants there, English proficiency or limited English proficiency. And then there's a whole bunch of other things they use. So, and I'll go through some of these metrics. They actually use their data that they have on trees in Tacoma to determine tree canopy coverage. There's actually research studies showing that if you have more trees in your area, you have a higher quality of life, which is kind of interesting. Life expectancy, these are all census data stuff that you can get. They also show accessibility, in particular voter participation, household with internet, and access to food and parks and open space, which is kind of interesting. Economy, they're looking at jobs in that area, again, census data, poverty rate, household income. They're looking at graduation rates, student mobility, and they actually use their statewide testing scores as well, which is kind of interesting. And then they also have environmental health, so they look at air pollution, which is data that the EPA actually puts out on every city, traffic roadways, diesel emissions, things like that. So briefly want to show you just the PowerPoint that I got from them, actually, which is their equity index will highlight areas of higher and lower opportunity for services and helps them be a little more equitable in how they provide services across the city. I'm going to skip some of these things just to show you what they do. So they use 29 indicators. They use 197 census blocks. And they also use a racial demographics overlay to create this equity index. So you're probably asking what goes into that number. Let's go over here. So they look at livability, so they look at nuisance, crime index, home value, tree canopy, life expectancy. They look at education, 4 years high school graduation rate, testing scores. They look at environmental health, so ozones, traffic, toxins, proximity to risk in the economy or the environment. They look at job rates, percentage of people living under the poverty line, and they look at parks and open spaces in a given census block. So they use all this data that they get already from the census and some other things that they have, and they kind of put it into a graphical model to help the city determine what services they can provide. I'm just gonna go through here just a little bit. So what they're using this equity index for is prioritizing funding, prioritizing where they're putting parks. It's obviously a much bigger city than we are, but other smaller cities have done this as well. Resource planning, loan distribution. They've got community funding partners that's actually using this data to help figure out in areas where there used to be redlining, where they wouldn't lend loans, how is that overlapping where areas of low equity? And they're using it to advocate for new business, budgeting. They use it to figure out where they spend their city budget on, which is interesting. But more importantly, their city council, after they created this index, directed all departments to use the index to help determine services in those departments. One city in California actually showed us how they used the index to determine where they were milling and repairing roadways across the city. And they found that more often than not, they were repairing roads in higher wealth, higher access areas than they were in other areas that may need it more. So it was really interesting to see just kind of how this data is, but more importantly, the city's moving towards a larger pool of data to help us make decisions. And I'd love for the Human Rights Commission, if you guys are interested in, to help us research other equity index programs that cities have done, and whether we should make one here, and what metrics we should use in order to do that. This is something that our development office has been looking at as well. So we want to see if you guys are interested in working with them to help us, as a Human Rights Commission, determine what metrics should we use to figure out where we should be providing services. Questions, thoughts?
So, why wouldn't someone just model it after what they have?
You certainly could. And I would encourage you guys to look at other cities to see what other demographics they
You're
use.
asking us, I believe, to just give you the metrics to input, or the key categories to input, or particulars. I'm not sure what you're asking.
Yeah, I'm asking for you guys to take a look at what other cities have done, and we've got some staff that can help with that. Because every city uses different metrics to determine their equity index. At least ones that I've seen so far. Not everyone uses, for example, tree canopy, right? It's not necessarily a data point that we have, but I would like to know what you all think is the most, important things that should be included to help us determine where we should be delivering services. So some cities only use basic census data to create it. Other cities prioritize like parks and space, right? And I would love for the Human Rights Commission to help us figure those things out and see what other cities are using.
Are you speaking for us to do research and then come to you with it? Or are you asking us to go to who you already have established and to meet with them to continue that? I'm not sure specifically what you're asking.
Yeah, so I would love for the Human Rights Commission to do some independent research on what other cities are using and whether it makes sense for us to create a social equity index. And once we have that, we'll start to connect the commission with our planning department, which can help develop the nuts and bolts of how do we gather all this data together. We've got lots of different data sets and programs that can bring those data together, but we need to know what to use first.
So you're asking us to do the groundwork research.
Yes.
pretty much.
That's
Bring that to you and then go from there.
That's correct, yep.
Based on what knowledge other cities have been giving, not necessarily as to what we would know the city needs. Because we really, we kind of gotta have an idea, but we don't have metrics to determine what it needs. Am I?
Yeah, it's seeing what other cities are using and whether you think those metrics would be good for our city.
As a general
Mhm.
rule.
Yep.
Yep.
Is city council doing any research in this area, or?
They are not currently, no.
So we'd be the first one.
That's correct. And I specifically brought it because I believe the Human Rights Commission is a very appropriate forum to do it. And I think, certainly once we get to the point, we should engage city council and, I think that's an opportunity and an opportunity for the Human Rights Commission to work on a project that can have very long-lasting impacts on how the city as a government provides services to our residents and which areas we use them.
That's great.
It's wonderful. The question becomes, are we to do both in the pits and within the community, do the groundwork necessary to bring justice, along with administrative, where are the resources? We have seven people. Is there a way to recruit citizens or other powers? Not power, that's not the word I'm trying to find. Other people that are interested in meeting on this, because if we do our job there, and we do our job there, I'm not sure how well we do it.
Yes, so I'm basically presenting this to you guys to start to think about it, to talk about it.
And I'm trying to be negative.
No. I certainly recommend that this group start to reach out to, for example, there's the IDEA Coalition that exists in the city that's working on racial equity. that could be an important group to make a part of. Those are made up of many other organizations and groups, including the city, that's doing, it's not doing this specific work, but it's trying to make organizations more inclusive. But I think there's an opportunity for the Human Rights Commission to partner with that group, or to get feedback from members of that group, or community feedback, right? What would you like to see as data points, I guess, for us, right?
Which group was that?
The IDEA group,
Oh.
the IDEA Coalition.
Where are they located? How do you, who owns it?
The United Way is managing that, and the head of it right now is Bishop Lee Croft Clark.
Oh.
You mentioned.
He's over.
He's at Healing
What
Word
committee?
Ministries.
When you did the, I think, didn't you mention that when you had the first service downstairs for the Buffalo folk?
Sorry, I'm sorry.
He's head of one committee. He's not head of the whole group.
No, I think he's been hired by the group to do
Right.
some of the work, yeah. Yeah.
And this is fairly new, this idea group?
They've been working
No.
for about a year or more, but they're finally gearing up to do some pretty strong community work.
I can connect with them on it, that's not a problem.
So if I hear you right, if this, once you're done with all this and everyone's yes, then you would begin to implement it through the town council.
Yep.
And then there would be funding, and you have a grant for this, or,
We don't currently have a grant for this in particular, but as we start to look at what data points are we using, or what information are we using to inform our decisions as a city, right? When we repair the roads, we're repairing the roads based on, well, that one looks bad, and that one looks bad, or we've had some complaints about this one, right? We aren't saying, well, this part of the city has a lot of factors that would be perfect for us to focus more funding on,
you know,
right? We don't do that. Just because we don't have all of those data points together, we haven't identified what are all the things that we're concerned about as a city. And so this is an opportunity that other cities have found have been using to say, how should we focus on housing, right? Should we be demolishing housing or improving housing in areas that have high need, right? Should we be looking at how we pave the roads in certain areas, or redo sidewalks or curbing? A lot of it is based on just when we're there, right? Or complaints.
What
we
you
get.
speak of is excellent. You know, the implementation, obviously, we have to discuss and see if we have,
Absolutely.
if we have the energies and the resources to do what you want.
Now, would this have to be, when it's all said and done, would this be like a cell that you'd have to, in other words, would you have to have a vote from the city council to say yes or no? So in other words, in the future, would we be presenting this and saying, this is why you need to do this? Is this kind of where it's gonna end?
I would love for you all to be able to spearhead this kind of project, and to say, that the Human Rights Commission, you know, we were able to create the metrics that figured out what is the social equity, what is what are the things that the city should be looking at, and it certainly presents to city council. Some city councils have adopted resolutions that require that social equity be a part of all of the decisions of the city. That is not something that's been presented currently, but certainly as under our administration, or my administration, you know, we have looked at equity, we've looked at additional inclusionary measures as a city, and we just need to
Shouldn't social equity be part of the city banking process?
It is, but we don't use all the data points because we're not quite sure what all the data points should be, right? Do we know where areas where we have housing that is a desperate need? Do we know various areas, general metrics on where there are lower poverty, right? Yes, we know those areas. We do use those metrics to help us figure out what to do in those areas. But we've never put together something comprehensive that says, here are all of the things we think of when we think of social equity, and we can now use those to measure it.
Right, well, I
More-
think that's great, so if you have a connection with Reverend Lee Croft, and you talk to him, then you can send us an email, and any of us who wanna attend those meetings,
I've
You
been
would
part
let
of
us
that
know,
meeting, so
and we
I'm
can go.
familiar with them.
Do you have any-
I think that would be a good group to partner with, because they'll give us more resources.
right, and when we're not trying to do these things
Yeah.
alone, I'd be more than happy to attend those meetings
Yeah,
with you.
Sure.
But it would be great if we got an email from you after, you spoke with him, to the Human Rights Commission saying this, and maybe if we knew about it like a week in advance.
What leverage it gives us, because most of those are big companies and stuff, United Way, Cummins, big companies.
Mhm.
That would have more, resource to information like that.
Yes. And places like Cummins could fund some of this work, so if you all decided, hey, we think that we need some assistance, because Tacoma used a consultant, and some other cities do, some others are just use internal views of metrics and try to get the data. But, if you feel like that's the case and we wanna get to the point where we should apply for grants or try to secure funding for it, we can certainly.
Right.
Do you have any recommendations of other cities that we should easily look at?
I do, not right off the top of my head, but I will send those all to you in an email with the presentation that we received from Tacoma, linked to the map. There were probably 3 or 4 other cities that did a presentation on their social equity index. So I'll get those presentations, those papers I have in my office, and make sure you all get them.
So that's fantastic.
Do you also have a list of the current, databases that you already know the city has that we can evaluate and compare? Or is it more we have to find what other people do to then see if we have?
I would look to see what other folks have. We are in the process of looking at a data solution called My Sidewalk. It allows us to pull census data, it allows us to pull together various data from different federal and state partners, but we don't have anything central. Unfortunately, most governments don't have any type of central database.
I've always used city data, you ever heard of that one, is that any? Cause
Yeah,
that lists quite a bit of, if you hit city data in any city in the United States, it comes up quite detailed. So you're saying that you're empowering us to create the metrics, and you mentioned before the Ideal Coalition already knows about this, or they don't know about this particular thing?
They're
No, I
not.
don't know about this.
Okay.
They're working on another project.
But certainly this would be in line with what, with the group's idea that they would like to ensure that every organization is more inclusive, right? And provides more equity access, and this is certainly a way for the city to provide a measurable index of how neighborhood census blocks are.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you for thinking of us.
Of course, yeah.
And Hubie, I'm looking forward to if you talk to Reverend Lee Croft and we get the email from you, I'd be more than happy.
Sure.
That sounds like Dan would be more than happy.
Mhm. I mean, we also could still meet, all of us privately as well, and maybe share information together someplace with computer.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
Well, it's not privately, you guys are a public body, so
right,
we
you know what I mean, rather than just individually, we could start, as a group, need another time to go through some of the, I mean, this is a fantastic thing, this is, could
Mhm.
transform cities across
Yeah.
the
It
world,
is-
even,
it is huge.
really, very practical.
just to show you briefly, this actually paired with, Tacoma has a strategic plan for 2025 that focuses on livability, economy, education, civic engagement, and accessibility and equity. So that's why some of these categories came into play. But they're basically saying, hey, we want to make sure that the services we provide are equitable and accessible. So here's where the metrics are saying why we need to spend in the areas we do. So, and then these were the metrics that they used. Some
Real
cities had
success.
less. Yep. Very interesting things, like I have not always thought of voter participation as an accessibility thing, right? So it was really interesting to see how they looked at access to healthy food, right? Where are the food deserts? Access to home internet, voter participation, road conditions, things like that. Really interesting metrics that you don't always think of. Great.
What about census information? Is that available, readily available, or?
It is, yep. So crime index is typically readily available with the census, median home value, average life expectancy. So a lot of this data here is already available either through federal agencies or through the census. So for example, the ozone layer levels or amount of non-diesel emissions are all EPA releases the data on each census block already. So it's other data that we can just kind of pull in. And I think the state releases education results here. I don't know if there's any federal, maybe the federal education department, Department of Education.
They do release this, and it's actually on the website.
Oh, good. Certainly data we can pull in.
Actually, I do have a question. I looked at we only have 9 members now, so we do have a quorum if it's just 6. Or do you
Based
count?
on 12.
Oh, it's based on 12. Sorry about that. I didn't- So even if we drop some, so we do need to pick up more than, I guess.
Anything else on this, guys? Thank you for allowing me the opportunity and to speak with you on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful program. Wonderful idea.
It's an interesting challenge.
I thought so.
Mhm.
The next thing on our list is the budget, and I'd like to speak about that while the mayor's here, because I got a letter from him
Mhm.
saying that we need to have a budget together by the end of the month, if we're gonna get any kind of funds allocated. And, I know the budget committee was, going over a few things. And, I guess we'd like to have a report on that.
Was that the email that Billy sent?
Maybe.
Right, there was no money on that though. It was just a
But it
tent
was-
and some canopy. The cards or some advertising.
Did you guys get a chance to meet her?
It looks like Billy and Dan met, is that
No, I
the
didn't
email
meet.
from
He
Billy?
sent me an email, then I said I could meet, and I never heard anything.
Yeah, I
And
don't,
then I thought maybe someone else might.
no, I believe,
So I can add a little context to that. So last year we provided, since you were all a new group, we provided some funding. There was a request to potentially do a festival and other things. So this year we have asked every board and commission if there's any funding requests, so that if there are any requests, we would try to do our best to include them in the budget. Our budget, my executive budget to the city council is due on October 8th, which will most likely be presented October 7th this year. So
Is that-
we start the budgeting process back in June and July, and we're now getting to the point where we've got these kind of we're getting to the point where we've got to finally put everything else together.
That's a calendar year, you're putting a budget for next calendar year?
Yes.
Not a fiscal,
Not-
calendar.
Yeah, our fiscal year and the calendar year run the same year.
Okay.
It'll be for 2023.
So we have till the end of August.
Yes.
Right, because I know in the last meeting it was $6,000. I wrote that down from our last meeting, and then Billy sent some things, but there was no.
yeah, so we
But this is the thing.
This
Okay, they gave us $6,000, we really haven't used it, and we haven't allocated. So we need to figure that out, and on top of that, we need to figure out what we need, for next year.
Right,
And, usually if you don't use money, you lose money.
exactly.
Does not carry over in the city. Yes, we
I
don't
have,
do a rollover.
I have an idea we could use the money for, but they're just ideas. The thing I was saying, like the college thing, but we'd have to organize that, it would be months down the road. When do we have to use the money by, December?
The funding that's been allocated to the Human Rights Commission just has to be used before the end of the year.
So this is doable.
Yes, doable.
Should we maybe focus on the budget for next year, like figuring that out first real quick, since it's due in like 2 weeks?
Yes. And then, we had some things we were looking at to spend the budget for this year. We can allocate that,
Yeah,
and we need to have something set up for next year.
just give us $100 grand.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, I'm sure that's like that.
Do you have a recommendation as far as what different commissions are requesting, or a specific range that would be appropriate?
Great question. This is the first year we've asked all commissions to provide us any type of numbers. So, certainly request, I often recommend to all of our departments, ask for the moon, because chances are we're gonna be cutting out all your stars and mostly chunks of your moon. That's just kind of how our executive process works.
Can we give you a lump sum, or do we have to give you a breakdown of the programs?
You don't have to give us a full specific breakdown, but we do need to know kind of what the funds are intended to be used for. It helps us because if you just give us you say we want 10 grand, when we go through our executive budgeting process, we're like, well, if we don't know what the 10 grand's for, we can't really justify it,
Okay.
then I may need to apply the 10
So
grand.
if we say we want 10 grand, 3 for advertising, 5 for promotions, or whatever that suffices.
That is much more specific and easier for us to justify.
And it's easier to come together with putting it at this point.
That's correct.
Well, we know we're talking about promotions, so that's gotta be part of it. We really haven't put anything out as far as.
I saw it, I just have the thing right here for Billy. A canopy from Walmart, which are around $100, maybe $150 for a better one. And then 500 business cards, that's the only 2 things he put on here. And a shirt design. So beyond that, there was no decisions.
And
That's the one you got too, right?
we don't have, a form to vote on that. That would be using the 6,000 for this year, along with.
That would just be,
We talked about a
Yeah.
table, we talked about covering for the table. I know Kelly and I did this whole budget and gave it to Scott. I
Wow.
believe Scott has that. We looked at using Jamestown Rubber Stamp Company is what we hooked up. And that was a year ago, of just having, swag, as they call it, at the tables when we're going to different events.
So like advertisement?
Yes.
so we were gonna spend money on advertising, but we didn't necessarily have an event we were gonna go to.
Yeah, but if we were going to Juneteenth, what, setting up
Okay.
a table at Juneteenth, setting up a table at Pride,
That makes sense.
setting
Yeah.
it up
I
a table
want
at
to-
your dog days, then we
That's
would have
fantastic,
that.
right.
I went to this, the Scandinavian Festival, which would have been a great opportunity to have a table there.
Right, all of
Or
those.
some of these other
We need that.
festivals, just to make our
You
presence.
know, that makes perfect sense, so if we have those materials, even if all of us cannot come, we'll have, boom, set up, there it is. Brochures, shirts,
That's what we
I
have,
like that.
Even when we were out at the movie night, we could have
correct.
set up out there.
Mhm.
So that was kind of, I know that was kind of
Can we
something.
get a car, a vehicle with human rights on it? No? How about a $100 car?
You might be able to get it back.
We can certainly get you that.
How about a matchbox? But that's a great idea, so can we, wait, we can't, we're not forms.
No.
Well,
Well, we could-
what we
We
need,
could
what I
get
need
that
to.
all listed and ready, so in September, we could, the budget committee, Billy, Dan, myself, can get a list. We could send it through an email before, so everyone has a chance to look at it, and we could vote on it at the September meeting, so everyone knows that we need a quorum and to be here.
Well, okay, but
That's to use
What,
this
what
money
I,
now.
but what I think we need to happen, we need to send an email and yes or no, or any adjustments, so we can get that to the council before the end of the month. We can do official
Yeah, for
vote.
next
Yeah.
year.
For
Yeah.
next year, yes.
I think we should really focus on how much money we want to allocate in things for next year.
So
We
I
don't
agree.
necessarily need to know specifically how many magnets or whatever we want, but we
Right.
do need to know how much, like, assume how much.
Mhm.
So I do need the committee to put that list together. So we can,
And a little more clear, in other
Yeah.
words. So we got some stuff now, so maybe we'll have to call Philly and
Yeah.
have a quick meeting.
And say you want it by, Ruby will send it to you by Wednesday, the 24th?
sounds good.
You want to send that to Billy?
Yeah.
Okay, then you
Mhm.
can CC me and we'll go from
Right.
there. Okay.
I did talk to Billy today, he said he couldn't make it, he told me the particulars, but he said he would try to really sit down and focus on it, this weekend.
Okay, then that'll work out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Then we would just, once we get it, then we'll have to assign people to obviously go to the store and get the things.
That's what we want to ask them for next year. That's what we should do.
Well, we'll have to find out what's the procedure for that.
For the,
When we decide to go.
More than what we were allocated this year.
to purchase things?
Yeah,
Yeah, certainly you can, work with Scott to figure out the purchasing of anything you want to use for the funding this year.
Mhm.
For next year, it could be as simple as you just give us a letter or an Excel sheet on what you want the allocations, you're requesting the allocations. So with the executive budget, we put what you request and we put what we're intending to give you, and then the city council does the final adjustments on the budget.
A couple months ago, we were discussing the different like categories that our like discovery groups are focused on. And we talked about maybe hosting like different events for each of those demographics. Is that something that we wanted to move forward with?
Well, I think that's gonna go into what, Joe wanted to talk about, right? When we talk about our groups, he has,
We could figure out how much, if we want to do like the monthly thing, how much we would want to allocate and kind of have a rough number for this thing next year.
mhm.
That would be a good idea.
well, we were discussing having one big thing versus several smaller ones. Cause I think the original thought was that we were gonna have, one of the streets, and then have everybody come down there. How we manage that, how we pull that off, and summer coming closer to a close, makes it a little difficult, but.
Some things to think about, potential use of funding, is if you would like to represent various community groups, you could use funding to purchase flags that we could display at City Hall, right, put on our flagpole, flag raisings. If you wanted to represent various community groups, for example, Scandinavian group, the Nordic group, typically puts up the Swedish flag or other type of Nordic flags. They'll do them down the streets, but they will also raise a couple flags. Sometimes they'll have just small community gatherings that we'll do on Tracy Plaza for various groups. I know there's been talk about doing one for our Native American population. So the Seneca Nation has reached out about potential or some type of event, some type of flag raising for them coming up this year in November, which is, I believe, Indigenous Peoples' Day. So you could look to see what's coming up next year, and then take an opportunity to either fund a flag and some type of celebration of that community group, or as you guys mentioned, you do have multiple community groups. You could use the funding to host, a couple like quarterly convenings or things like that of those groups for potential funding for food or other events or things that those groups might need. Just a couple of different ideas to throw out there.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Flag idea, super.
Mhm.
Okay, so if we can dig into that, that would be great. I don't know if anybody had anything for the general discussion.
The disability committee met, mental health, substance abuse. And, we had talked about meeting with different agencies in the area to talk about what we can do better to address the needs of the people who use substances or recovery or using mental health services. We made a phone call to Prevention Works, touched base with them, extremely receptive to the idea. We're gonna have a meeting with them. I'm trying to get this okay through the crew before we proceed with anything. But the plan is to meet with them and the Mental Health Association, Stockton County Mental Health, and those groups. Meet with them and discuss these things, what we can do. And then, if it's okay, we'll continue. We have a list of all the agencies provided to us to go visit or survey, preferably, we decided to visit. And they're receptive, the groups are receptive, the agencies, for us to come in and have a conversation. And probably ask some questions about how we can be more helpful. So that's a matter of approval, and it will carry out. But if we don't have a quorum, I guess we can't approve that.
I just want to mention,
I'm sorry?
Pastor Clark does run a substance abuse group, and it works throughout the county, and they are bringing in Daryl Strawberry's wife on, I think it's October. So there's an event coming up.
So, but, you know, I don't want to proceed, we don't want to proceed without everyone agreeing that that's something we should proceed with. That's the first thing we want to do. We have it planned out. We have already begun a survey of questions to ask them. And it's just a matter of, is it in agreement with the group that we should continue? And then we will. If we think there's a problem with that or something that's not appropriate, then let me know, let us know, we won't. But what's the feeling?
No, I think it's good.
Should we proceed or not?
I think so. I don't think we need a formal
Right.
vote. I think, if there's something that this group needs to do formally, we can take a vote on it, but at this point, I think we proceed.
Proceed. Okay, the next item is, I had spoke to legal prior to this meeting. There's, if you haven't noticed, there are Trump signs up on houses that use profanity. And according to the law, that person, for freedom of speech, et cetera, whatever reasons, are allowed to do that. But I would like, and I'm speaking with him, I would like to represent the Human Rights Commission to go speak with them. Not about the fact that they have flags up, not about the fact that they have F5, and not the fact that Make America Great Again, that's their business. But when you put the F word out there, and kids go by there every day to go to Washington School and to Ring School, where these two that I know about, one I'm talking to, I'd like to represent the group, to go speak with them and beseech them to at least fold the flag up so that the F word isn't showing, so that we don't show our children, teach our children that that's okay. So I'm gonna go talk to the guy, but I wanna know that, and legally I can represent us, but I wanna know your feelings. I'll be representing the group to speak with them in a very loving, wonderful way.
And that's totally legal, because there's more than just that. There's some on pickup trucks, there's on Halleck.
I'm just concerned right now with kids walking by.
Right.
And if you want to see the sign, I have it, if you haven't seen
Yeah,
it.
no,
They're in a lot of places.
yeah.
But it's,
It's-
I can only be concerned with it so
It's in
much
your
at one
neighborhood.
time, it's in my neighborhood. and it's just not good for the kids. And I wanna be able to at least speak to the man to man, and I want your discussion or approval to go ahead and do that, representing the Human Rights Commission, that we at least ask the man to please take the swear word out. That's it. You can leave the rest of them out, he can put whatever he wants, but for children to walk by and see that is a bad example for their growth. That's my opinion, for whatever that's worth.
I can add some context to that if you would all like.
Please do.
So, this happens a lot in cities and communities, towns, villages, where individuals will put up political or personal signs that have curse words, swear words, whatever you want to call it, profanity. It is also your concern, Joe, is very similar to what a lot of other community members tend to be concerned about, those things. The city, as an entity, as a government entity, has to respect the freedom of speech rights that individuals have to put up whatever type of political sign. The only thing the city can regulate is the kind of dimensions of the sign and purposes of the sign, what it's affixed to under various codes. But you can put up a rebel flag on your property. You can put up a sign with profanity. We as this government don't have any authority to make you take that down just because there's profanity on it. But certainly as a Human Rights Commission, you all can approach members, or approach community members, especially as community members, and broach that conversation, right, about why this may or may not be harmful to the community.
What would be the correct step? Would it be, maybe send a letter? Would that be a first step, or?
Well, I think that's really the only step. You know, you can certainly ask this individual to take down this sign based upon profanity in it. Fortunately or unfortunately, or however you want to look at it, he has the right to place this sign upon his property. And I'm saying them. They have the right to put this sign on their property. I will say my office, as the Corporation Counsel's office, has received several complaints about the sign specifically on Buffalo Street from neighbors.
Because of the kids.
Because of kids walking to Washington School, as well as the fact that,
And that's elementary school, right down the hill also.
yeah,
Fancy
as,
sign.
as well as the fact it just doesn't look good to have a flag that says, you know, profanity and then the president's name on it with the aesthetic of the houses that surround it. With that being said, you know, we all evaluate the look of our own houses and decide what is good looking or what is not good looking, so individuals have that freedom. But, forgot where we were on this, but I think really the only recourse that this board or this group could have is to ask the individual, you know, as Joe put it, you know, address it, you know, person to person and see if they will do this for the children. And obviously, they have the right to say, no, please leave my doorstep.
Mm-hmm.
That's
I-
not,
I would, before you go, I would like to draft a letter to send it to the person first. And do like a 1-2 that way. We draft a letter that's trying to be respectable, and then go to the person. Just so that he knows that there's more than just one person. I mean, you represent human rights, but it'd be nice if you sent a letter first.
I
I-
do give it,
You probably agree, but I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think I don't know how to explain this. Having been in psychology my entire life, that man, and I don't know him at all, never met him, would respect a face-to-face, man-to-man talk about honest feelings from somebody else before he would kowtow to any power lever. He would see it as a power lever. It may not be the intent, but he will
Good point.
certainly see it as, there goes the Democrats that can't try, I mean, that's the mindset. I think a man-to-man, honest talk would be respected, at least respected, whether he does it or doesn't do it, at least I believe he'll listen. Because I'm going to him as a man who's concerned about his community, has a much more impact and much more respectability to him than any letter. Once we send him a letter, I'm not going there. Because once I go there and say, remember the letter we got?
Right.
Goodbye, Joe.
It's your neighbor, right?
Well,
Well, not your
not
director,
really.
around the area.
Around, you know where I live, around the corner.
I don't think anything prevents you, Joe, going and talking to him, but certainly if this board wants to send a message, then a letter makes sense.
If that's what the board wants to
Well,
do.
I really think,
May I give the caveat real fast on this, is in my experience, you run the risk of this individual putting up a larger flag or
Yeah.
a more prominent flag
It's okay.
by engaging.
It's when we do nothing that Hitler takes over. Okay? It's the quiet people that staying quiet and allowing it without recourse of some kind. Even if he walks around saying, oh, these people hate me because I have this sign up, and he feels that within the gut of who he is more effective than allowing him to do whatever he wants to do. At some point, when do we stand and say, this is just inappropriate for our community? Regardless of the outcome, regardless of the consequences. If he shoots me in the head, he shoots me in the head. The point I'm making is we have to stand for something.
Or you could, that'd be your homework assignment, so the next meeting, you can tell us how.
I'm sorry?
I said that's your homework assignment, the next meeting, because you're a psychologist, so you already know a person, we already know this, a person that is going to have that sign is a certain type of person.
I know that person, I know that person.
And you are right, I'm not sure about it, that might exasperate, so.
It may, but I'm hoping that my approach would be, welcoming and rationalizing, even though most Trump supporters are very, well, I shouldn't have said that. Strike that from the record.
But Joe is right, I'm not sure a letter would be the
right,
correct.
this was something that's on your heart, it's in your neighborhood, you want to do that, who are we to say you cannot?
Oh, I
go
can
to that
do it,
meeting? Right,
but I would
absolutely.
prefer to go there and say, listen, I just want to talk to you, and I represent the Human Rights Commission for the city, and we had a discussion, and we talked about you. And we think that you have absolutely every right in the world to say whatever you want to say, sir. But all we ask is for the children's sake.
Mhm.
If a guy, if the guy gets mad at me and throws down.
That's a very good approach.
This is the thing, if you're saying that you represent the human rights, that's just as bad as sending a letter.
That's what
But I think,
I mean, if you go there as a neighbor,
yeah, if you
Okay.
say,
Then
and
I
I
can
sit
see
on
it.
the Human Rights.
There you
And I
go.
wanted to sit on
The
it,
Human
but
Rights Commission.
That's a better
You know,
way.
anytime I broach a subject with anyone.
Right, I
say,
sit
I'm a
on a
teacher,
commission
I
that's
sit on the
interested,
Human
yeah,
Rights
that's fine.
Commission, and I'd love to talk to you about,
Yeah, and if he's receptive, fine, if he isn't, at least we tried something.
right,
I cringe when I walk every day with my dog past there, and I cringe thinking.
Right, but you have every right to say something, because you're a citizen too.
I understand that, but I really want it to come from the hearts of all of us as a group that support the idea and the thought that that's an injustice to our children, and we're here for justice.
Mhm.
And if
if
that's
it's
what we're.
not against Trump, it is against the profanity.
Right, he
I
can
think
put it,
that's what you have to say.
I don't care, I mean, people like that don't bother me, I just
Mhm.
take them for who they are, but when you use that verbiage so blatantly in front of the children, I find that, regressive. I don't know any other word to use.
Now, just an aside, because that has bothered me too, especially when I see high school students with pickup trucks with 2 flags in the back. Would that be, is that a school issue?
no.
It's nobody's
No,
issue.
it's nobody's
So you
issue.
can't do anything about that either?
No.
That's nobody's issue, but I think, I don't wanna confuse, look, if they had a Biden, I love Biden, and F you all who vote for Trump, I'd say the same thing.
Right.
I'd say the same thing, it's.
Right, it's not the way to run a just society, we're trying to.
Well, it's not a way to raise our children in the community. they'll better walk around thinking, hey, he's got, oh, look at that F word, I can say it, or I can do it, I walk around after you, wow, he's got it up there, he's an adult, I can't. I mean, it's just counterproductive to anything peaceful and good. But that may be a moral thing that it's not up to me to decide. I just think it just isn't good, it stinks.
Well, and they seem.
I don't even know why necessarily sometimes why I feel the way I feel.
Right, well, they are growing more, and I'm 59, so I've been around somewhat, but I've never seen vulgarity in my entire life anywhere with politics until just recently, so this is very sad, and
Right.
it definitely was not back in the 80s. I mean, I grew up with the Reaganite eras, and there was none of that. There was no Jimmy Carter, none of that. I mean, this is like,
I don't want to,
sad.
I don't want to, right, I don't want to dictate the time. I'll
Hold
take
it.
care of it. I'll take care of it.
Hold it.
The next
I don't
item I
wanna get
have-
off too
I'm sorry.
far.
I'm sorry?
I don't wanna get off too far. You have your right to talk to them,
Okay,
and we'll follow up from
okay,
there.
thank you,
See what
thank
happens.
you. Recall last time I thought maybe we should have a brochure to hand out
Yes.
wherever we go, Momina, I said that right this time. Good job, huh? We can take these pamphlets, and I'll show them to you, and I'll explain, and then I'll show it to you. And we have distribution sites, we think about printing 10,000, and Momina was gonna put it in Spanish, you can translate this to Spanish also, and go to City Hall, health facilities, libraries, tops markets, city events, booths, if we have a booth somewhere, mental health agencies in the community, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what you see here is, do you know your rights under the law and the Jamestown Human Rights Commission? And inside would be our purpose, and if you look on the website, you'll see the 4 reasons why we exist. Next would be a section that is dedicated to your committee, okay? Like education, quality education aims to ensure the development of fully rounded human beings, blah, blah, blah about education, okay? So every committee will have a blurb about the importance of justice within that round. Then, on the back, we're gonna have the education committee, Kimberly Knight, and we'd like to use, we talked about this, Scott's email.
Well, we were talking about if we could, as a commission, have an email address that maybe Scott could manage, and we could see
That's a
if
great
we can forward
idea.
them kind of on.
Okay, so we get an email address, and you address it to whatever concern you have, it'll go to the appropriate committee, and from the committee, we will take the action necessary to remedy the situation. So I'll pass, and then on the back, it has the seal of the Jamestown, New York, and blah, 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 blah.
That could be used for the budget committee, and then they can be made, not just paper, but you get real nice, the lamination, you know, some kind of,
Absolutely.
spend the money, you get
So-
high quality.
We need to
Now,
make
if you
sure.
don't, right, if you don't like the cover, has some alternatives, human rights are not optional, human rights are for everyone, things like that can be used. The reason I like the reverse print is it gets attention. You see that, you know, what the, you know, almost black and white, white on black, almost slaps you in the face, you almost have to look at it to see what the heck it is, that's why I opted to go that way.
We're happy to, if you've got a version of that, or a different version of it, my team's happy to try to just make sure it conforms with all the city logos
Yes.
and has.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we're happy to help,
right, thank you. So
Then
what
you
I
have
have,
it in the wrong city.
if by next month, if you could, within the next month, just put a little paragraph about your committee, and then tell me which committee you had, and then the email address will be central to all of us, and then it will be distributed appropriately to the committee head who's in charge of that particular area. Does that sound like
So you're saying the center portion will be,
an explanation of each, pretty much, an explanation of each topic that we cover. So, education, disabilities, you know,
all the subgroups?
all
So
the
you would actually have,
right,
5 or 6 different,
more. maybe.
I think you meant that he would have just a small information about
Yeah,
each
and
subgroup
each-
on
yeah.
the.
Oh, a small blurb of each group?
Like 3 to
Okay.
4
So
sentences.
if you could please put together a paragraph about your group, you know, how
Little
important.
blurb, like this is what.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your contact, your name and your committee head, that's all I need, your name, your committee head, because we're gonna have a central email, and a little blurb about your committee, then we'll put it together, I'll finish it, that's just a shell for a rough copy idea. We'll present it to legal and, what's your name? Eddie Sunquist. And we'll present it to them to look it over, make sure it's copacetic, and then we'll get it printed.
Okay, that sounds good.
And that's all I have.
That's
That
fantastic.
sounds good.
That was enough.
I have enough, yeah.
And you know, it's nice, there's no profanity on this.
Oh, yeah, look at the back, look at the back. If you don't like us, F you.
Joe, the profanity certainly got your attention, right? So if you put a big yes you on the front of that,
Yes.
certainly.
We'll get attention,
Yeah.
just like the Goomba on.
That wouldn't be good for our mayor. What kind of city you run?
I'm not sure that would pass our quality control.
No, depends who's in charge.
We'll certainly look into it.
Send it to me.
But is it reasonable to have email?
Yes, that was something that's I'd heard from various members of the group, so that's very easy for us to put together. We'll do a centralized human rights email and have Scott, have it over to Scott.
Let us know the progress,
Yeah, of course.
That's a great idea.
because we need that in print. And hopefully now, wherever we go, whatever we do, we have something to explain to whomever we're targeting. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's great.
Thank you, sir.
That's a great launch.
And Spanish will come courtesy of our,
Who's
Sorry.
done English with
Or board of translation, right.
our Spanish interpreter over there, for which I know nothing.
Okay, the financial subject, we really have already talked about
Yeah.
that. Any exploration group updates?
Just the one you were doing.
What's that?
Updates for exploration group.
That was it.
We did
It's just
that.
a,
Yeah,
Okay,
Nothing for education, it's the summer.
Summer break.
Summer break. I'm gearing up, I'm gearing up for the fall.
Am I hearing right, if you're gonna eliminate,
Family up there. We covered the streets, it wasn't that fun, okay? You didn't survive.
say something about that?
No, I
My
don't
technique
think
is always
so.
be obtuse.
Yeah, like in the schools.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any emails about that. I know there was, you know, a grant, because everyone has, fallen under that, free lunch. If anything, I think breakfasts are coming back and we will be eating them in the schools also.
Okay.
That there won't be, you know, the take-home breakfast, which is another thing in neighborhoods where the bags and the orange juice and the milk was always just thrown, especially on Buffalo Street.
I just thought I heard something this morning on the news.
Oh,
Talking about eliminating.
Sir, can I ask you to speak up? I hear I'm a little older, I can't hear very well.
I was just saying, I thought I heard something on the news where I thought they were eliminating the free lunch program.
Really?
Oh.
well, we've always had the free lunch, you know, before you had to, apply for it, then the last, oh goodness, don't quote me on this, but 5 years, you know, the whole city was
Right.
just, free lunch. But there's always been, through New York State, free and reduced lunch.
You have to qualify for it.
Yes, you had to qualify for it, it was either free or you paid a quarter, but in Jamestown, they've always been able to, in the last, I would say, 5 years, maybe more, that everyone.
I think it changed, I heard the mother complaining it's $3.25 per child.
$3.25.
I heard that
And
last
that, my goodness, we haven't,
Wow.
as a teacher, we have not seen anything like that. And
Yeah,
we've
I
never,
heard
they
there's
have
some
not
kind of
had to.
change coming, but I don't know, I didn't catch exactly what it was.
Because I wanna say even our new systems, they don't accept any money. Teachers weren't even allowed to buy lunches last year because the cash register, like, there was nothing, and the food was just free.
I did hear that last week, 325.
You're talking about the
For
college.
Jamestown, or like, I know fall, it's like
I don't
the
know what's-
city of Jamestown
I don't know.
has
what's
always
going
been free, I would say, for the last 5.
on.
Always, in my 27 years of teaching, there's always been free or reduced lunch. Like I said, you either paid a quarter if it was reduced, or it was free.
Hmm.
I know my nephews go to Falconer and they pay, there's not, I'm very confident that there's, if you filled out paperwork and qualified for free and reduced lunch there, but I know there was a special grant they were always working on in Jamestown. Because mostly all of the schools.
I don't know, just something I just heard at a glance.
Do parents need help with filling out forms to get qualified for free lunches? Is it something?
Well, we haven't filled those papers out in a long time. All they had to do before, I believe, is I would say you would put your,
Food stamp
your
card?
WIC number on, you know, if you're in the system, that's.
So was
already-
it hard for them to access the free lunches?
Oh, absolutely not.
I mean, it wasn't a
I-
barrier in their way?
I worked for 23 years in school and it was always free
Okay.
lunch. Yeah, there was no.
This is something, you know, maybe we
Yeah,
could
but the
simplify.
schools, I would say, I don't know.
Yeah, it might have been Faulkner, but.
Okay, I don't know, like, I know Falconer, Frewsburg, Southwestern, the Warren kids, if you know, like that, I'm sure that some.
I saw the Falcon, I never seen them paying anything. The kids are up there picking it up. Do they prepay?
In the summertime, or for summer, no, at school, I know my nephews.
They don't pay anything.
Pay,
They must prepay or something, I don't know.
you
Give them a
can, you
number.
put money on your account
Oh, okay.
there.
That's why, because I never saw them take a nickel out of their pockets, grab
Mhm.
lunch.
But, I don't know, Yubi, I could definitely find out for you, but I would think if that was something we would, maybe I'll know on
Well,
August
maybe,
30th.
maybe it hasn't hit yet, I don't know, but
Yeah.
I heard something this morning. All right, no other explanation?
I have an idea, very quickly. One way to help the exploration groups, I was sharing this before the meeting started, we'd have to spend some money on it, would be to have, you know, in a college, remember we had the college setting where you have all the different clubs? What if we had a building or a place, food, and then every single one of our exploration groups or subgroups has a table with a name on it. And then maybe you have like a speaker, one of us, or someone else to give a little bit of introduction on the Human Rights Committee, and you advertise it to the whole town, we might be able to fill up some of these vacancies, and then meet people in person. You know how you have like a college fair and each, wouldn't that be a
Sorry,
great
I don't want
idea?
to interrupt you, I have to head out, but I'll come back and shut everything off.
Okay, thank you. So, this is something we could do in a few months, we need time to organize it, maybe not a lot of time, but wouldn't that be a great way to, then pass out the brochures? I don't know, would we use the Robert Jackson Center? We would need a large facility, and you always had to have food. Food would be
I
key.
think we could do that, I think that could fall under our budget.
But wouldn't that be great?
I think that's
Yes.
a great idea, since we couldn't do a full, fair or meeting
We need a banner.
inside, but I think that's a great idea,
Put that in
something
the
we can pull
We
together.
could easily do it October, November, we have time, and
Right.
And because it'd be inside, we don't have to worry about the weather, and that could be a good way to introduce the public, but also increase our subgroups
Stuff like that.
and get people who are interested.
Like, even just right downstairs in Tracy Plaza on a fall evening.
Sure. Yeah,
That
we can
is
do that
true.
rather quick, and I think that'd be good for the subgroups to know that there's someone there to support them.
I think the best way to go about doing that though is, since we're not very well known, is piggybacking what was like on some other event that's going on at the time and doing that. Because I think if we kind of put together our own thing, even if we advertise really hard, I think we may be able to support it.
That's true, is there any things coming up October, November, you're aware?
Well, even if we had, a leader and a couple representatives, that would be nice, just to have a little, kind of get together, recognition or something.
Or even like a dinner. Taylor, could we use the college? Do
Have
they
a
allow
house.
outside groups? Because the college is fantastic. What's that lobby you have the thing at? What's that room
The
called?
student union building?
Student Union Building. They have a stage, and that's where they had these clubs. And it was so great. It was information, like they had, you
Well,
know, it was great.
the Sheldon House has been offering, invitations for people to use it. So there's a possibility to do that in there, that'd be a good setting for something like that.
How would we go about doing that as a committee? Like, do we need to assign someone? I mean, it's not hard to get going, but you'd have to have someone to get the place, get the date, organize the food or something.
Right, that's exactly what we need to do, and more people just need to say, yes, I'll take that on, and.
I really think we should, for our first thing, we should really take advantage off of something else.
Okay.
Because I don't think that we have enough recognition
For anybody to come.
for anybody to
That
come.
is a
It's
good
gonna be
point.
kind of,
That's why these things, you know, we go out in the community and talk to everybody, we hand out 10,000 pamphlets, now all of a sudden, we have a pamphlet that says, come to the symposium of speakers presented by the Jamestown Human Rights Commission. All of a sudden, it's got a group people that may come because now they know who we are. I think right now, nobody knows who we are.
I think you have a good point, because when I met with Tony for that whole year in the disability group, at most 4 people, that's it. And then I texted Justin about the LGBT community before the meeting started, in his text, he said he only met like 4 times, and it was just a few people, so you have a very good point. And Jody, she advertised that everywhere about the disability group. 3, 4 people show up, hardly anybody. And we even had it here in City Hall, so you have a good point.
I think going to events and like you guys were saying, having representatives, I think we just really need to look at the calendar and kind of divvy up the different events going on. And we'll have pamphlets and we'll have hopefully a table and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, even if we hold off till February, March to do
Right,
it,
we're just.
the idea is superlative, it's just the timing.
But anybody knows, I can't think of any big events in October, November, is there like a Christmas?
Well, there were.
There's events every
There's
month.
A
yeah,
city calendar or something, and I think that's something we need to really like do really ahead of time, like our first meeting in January, because there are certain events, big events that happen every year at the same time, like Pride and stuff like that, and we need to make sure that we're not deciding to attend these things at the last minute, if we're planning for it, it's on the calendar, we have people going to these things ahead of time. So that's the only way we're gonna be able to like put ourselves out there, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
There's the Labor Day Festival at Bergman Park, we could do
Oh.
labor.
Oh,
Put a
that's coming
booth
up
there.
really
Is it
quick
gonna be
though.
this year? Is it coming back? Oh, it is.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Ah.
That's 2
Have
weeks
a
from
booth.
now, so.
right.
And
We
see,
can
we just missed the car
Banner.
show, we
Banner.
just missed the
Banner.
drive-in, downtown, so, yeah.
So
I think if we can really hit the Labor Day event, that would be a good one.
Now, if you envision this, got a table or a booth, we got a banner that we're talking about making for the Human Rights Commission, then we man it, then we have these. No, we won't have them by then.
So that's 2 weeks, that might
But
be.
if people are available, we can get a table, we can print some stuff out, and we can just like, we just gotta start somewhere, like.
That's true.
Mhm.
And
A
then you
simple
can talk
flyer.
to Billy about the budget.
Give it a single 8.5 by 11, anything.
Mhm.
No, I can't do that, I'll be there, but I can't man the.
Is that a Monday or is it the whole weekend?
It's the
I don't
Sunday
know.
and Monday's the rain date for it.
Okay, so Sunday's the main day.
It's Sunday is
Okay.
the date, and then if
Because
it rains.
Monday I
then-
got-
You don't do anything on Sundays, I know.
No. But Monday, my parents are coming over. I'm on TV now or whatever, so now they all know. My parents are over.
Okay.
All right, so if there's nothing else,
For events.
we all clear?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see, our next meeting is comes early, right?
It is
September.
16.
I think it's the second week and not the third week. And I have a conflict in October also, so maybe second week in October.
Who's your vice chair?
There's no vice chair.
Did you say?
There isn't.
There is one now.
There is one now. Hi, vice chair.
Hello.
Gotta have a vice chair in case.
All right,
Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry, I wrote it wrong, it's September 9th.
yes.
I was, do you wanna get this
Oh,
thing?
yes,
I
we
was-
have it at home.
I-
Mhm.
This was an updated one. I was
We get
wrong.
an email anyway, right? A week ahead of time.
Yeah, September 9th.
We usually do.
So you are
Did
right.
it move up because there was a you had a conflict?
Yeah, I
you
have
did?
a wedding on the ninth,
Oh, if they finally get married again, huh? Is renewing the vows?
no, I'm performing.
I know, you're perhaps it's
September 9th.
In October, it's gonna have to be on the 14th.
I think we
As
all.
long as we get an email telling us when.
Yeah, Michaela sent that out at the beginning of the year. The next one is October 21st.
You play video
It'll
games
have
over
to
there?
be the 14th now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
That'd be cool if you.
All right,
So what,
all minds are clear.
Mm-hmm.
We're boring.
I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Second. All right, thank you very much. Have a good evening.
thank you.
And thank you for all your good ideas. So, Joe, privately then, we'll get together with my
I'm
baseball.
waiting for you.
Jam. Okay.
I'm waiting for you.